A man is already dead before the sun reaches the walls, and before the siege ends, many more will follow. He lies beside the inner courtyard well, his back against the stone, his mouth slightly open, as if he had been trying to call for water. From the towers above, the castle still looks powerful. Thick gray walls, high battlements, banners hanging stiff in the cold wind. From a distance, it promises safety, a fortress against the violence of the outside world. But inside the gate, the courtyard smells of damp straw, unwashed bodies, and something faintly sour that has begun to follow the living. The man died during the night because the well was guarded after dark. It was not cruelty, it was simple arithmetic. By the 13th century, every lord in Western Europe understood a simple truth of siege warfare. The enemy outside the walls might kill you with swords, but the enemy inside the walls was hunger. Stone could resist catapults for months. Human bodies could not resist starvation for nearly as long. Weeks earlier, the alarm bells rang across the countryside, and the gates opened wide. Farmers arrived first with carts of grain and frightened children. Shepherds drove animals through the gate tunnel. Then came villagers, carrying whatever they could hold: sacks of barley, tools, bedding, cages of chickens. The castle had been built for perhaps 200 permanent residents. Now, more than 1,000 people were trapped inside it. From the battlements, the world outside seems calm. Beyond the moat stretch abandoned fields of early summer, grain bending in the wind that no one will harvest. Farther away, the enemy camp spreads across the hillsides like a second town. Rows of tents, cookfires sending thin smoke into the sky. Wooden siege engines slowly taking shape under the watchful eyes of their builders. But the real battlefield is not outside the walls. It is inside them. Every morning, the granary doors open under guard. Inside the thick stone hall stand wooden bins filled with barley and oats, sacks of dried peas stacked carefully against the wall. The steward counts the grain again and again, scratching numbers into a wax tablet by candlelight. If the castle feeds everyone normally, the food might last 5 weeks. If rations are cut, perhaps 3 months. But no one knows how long the enemy intends to wait. So the order comes on the second morning of the siege. Half rations. Bread is issued once a day. The announcement spreads through the courtyard like cold rain. Bakers receive smaller sacks of flour. The loaves shrink. What was once a thick, round loaf becomes a flat disc barely larger than a hand. Arguments begin before the first week ends. A soldier accuses a baker of hiding flour. A woman screams when a guard refuses her a second portion for her sick child. 2 peasants fight near the ovens over a dropped crust of bread while the crowd shouts around them. The guards separate them with the butts of their spears. At night, the overcrowding becomes impossible to ignore. Every hall, stable, and shed is packed with bodies sleeping close together for warmth. Families lie on straw in corridors beneath stone arches. The great hall, once used for feasts beneath painted beams, now holds dozens of villagers wrapped in rough cloaks. Smoke from cooking fires drifts through the doorways. The smell of animals mixes with sweat and damp wool. Waste pits overflow faster than they can be emptied. Disease arrives quietly. A child begins coughing near the stables. An old man develops a fever and cannot rise from the straw where he sleeps. Soon, more people fall sick. At the center of it all lies the well, a dark circle of stone in the courtyard. Every person inside the walls depends on it. That is why the guards lock it at night. Without control, the water would be gone by morning. The dead man beside the stone rim learned this too late. During the second week of the siege, the enemy begins testing the walls. Stones from crude catapults arc through the sky and crash against towers or empty courtyards. Dust rises from the impact. The walls remain standing. But the real attack arrives in another form. One morning, the defenders see a wagon pushed toward the moat under a white flag. Inside lie swollen animal carcasses, horses dead long enough to rot in the sun.
The wagon is tipped into the water. By evening, the smell reaches the castle. Rotting animals thrown into wells or moats are a quiet weapon of siege warfare. Inside the walls, fear spreads quickly. New orders appear. No washing clothes in the well water. No watering animals without permission. Anyone caught wasting water will be punished publicly. The punishments come quickly. A young thief caught stealing grain from the granary is tied to a post beside the well. The crowd gathers silently while the guard lashes him with a leather whip.
The lesson is meant for every stomach in the courtyard. By the third week, the animals begin to disappear. Chickens are eaten first. Their bones are boiled again and again for broth. Sheep follow. Then the pigs kept in the yard vanish one by one. Fresh meat becomes a memory. Soon meals shrink to coarse bread and thin pea soup. People begin watching the rats differently. At first, they are only a nuisance. Gray shapes darting along grain bins or slipping into cracks between stones. But hunger changes how they are seen. A few desperate people begin setting crude traps using pieces of string and broken baskets. The first roasted rat is eaten behind a stable wall. Within days, more traps appear. The castle is learning new rules of survival. Beneath the visible life of the courtyard, another world waits inside the stone. Narrow stairs lead down into storage chambers carved deep into the rock. The air there is cool and still. Barrels of salted meat stand in shadow beside sacks of grain and jars of dried beans. Only a few people know the full contents of these rooms: the lord, the steward, and the guards who watch the doors. Rumors spread through the crowded sleeping halls at night. Some say the lord hides vast reserves of food for himself. Others whisper about secret tunnels beneath the castle. Most rumors are wrong, but one of them is not. Deep beneath the keep, a narrow passage slopes through the rock toward a hidden exit beyond the walls. Possibility. If the food runs out, someone may try to use it. By the fourth week, the castle sounds different. Conversations grow shorter. Laughter disappears. The grinding stones in the kitchens turn more slowly. One afternoon, a man collapses near the well. No one rushes forward at first. The crowd has learned a brutal instinct: conserve strength. Someone finally lifts him from the ground. He is not dead, only faint from hunger. But the silence that follows spreads through the courtyard like cold water. Outside the walls, the enemy waits patiently. Sieges are battles of time. Inside the castle, time is measured in bread. One night, a man is caught near the postern gate, a narrow door used by messengers in peaceful years. He had been trying to open it in the dark and run across the fields. The guards drag him into the torchlight. Desertion. The Lord cannot allow it. If one person escapes, others may follow. The punishment comes before dawn. When the gate opens briefly the next morning to dump waste beyond the moat, the man's body is hung from the outer wall where the enemy camp can see it. No one speaks about it aloud, but the message is understood. No one leaves. By the sixth week, the bread changes again. Bakers mix crushed peas and oats into the flour. The loaves become darker and harder to chew. Leather begins disappearing from the castle. Old belts, saddle straps, fragments of worn boots are boiled in iron pots for hours until the tough material softens. The broth tastes bitter. People eat it anyway. The castle has entered another phase. The question that haunted the first days of the siege becomes impossible to ignore. Not whether the walls will fall, but whether the people inside will break first. The turning point arrives on a gray morning when shouting spreads through the courtyard. A crowd gathers outside the granary doors long before the guards arrive. Someone claims rations have been cut again. The steward appears with his wax tablet. The truth is simple. The rations are smaller. The shouting grows louder. A man accuses the steward of hiding grain. Another demands that the Lord open the hidden stores. Guards lower their spears. order returns slowly. Fear is part of the system now. Above them, the enemy watches. From the towers, soldiers can see the changes clearly. Thinner bodies, fewer cooking fires, longer lines near the well. Inside the castle, another danger grows. The waste pits are nearly full. Filth gathers in dark corners of the courtyard. Flies swarm wherever sunlight touches the damp ground. Soon, fever spreads among families sleeping near the stable walls. The castle priest moves through the crowd whispering prayers while the steward counts the sick. In siege conditions, illness becomes arithmetic. Below the castle, the storage chambers grow quiet. The last barrels of salted meat have already been opened. One night, several men disappear from the sleeping halls and move through the narrow tunnels beneath the keep. Someone has told them about the hidden passage. They carry a dim oil lantern and follow the damp corridor toward freedom. But the tunnel is watched. The Lord expected this. Guards appear from the darkness ahead. The escape ends quietly. At dawn, the prisoners are locked into wooden stocks beside the well, where everyone must see them. Hope of escape dies there. Outside the walls, the siege tightens. Wooden towers rise near the moat. Arrows occasionally strike the battlements. Inside the castle, the animals are gone. The grain bins echo when struck. People move slowly through the courtyard as if the air itself has thickened. Then, during the 8th week, the system almost collapses. The well rope snaps. It happens suddenly while soldiers haul up a bucket. The thick rope frays and breaks. The bucket falls into darkness with a distant splash. For a moment, no one moves. Without the well, the castle cannot survive. A new rope is lowered hours later while guards hold the crowd back. Thirst sharpens tempers faster than hunger. When the bucket finally rises again, full of cold water, the relief feels almost miraculous. But the lesson is clear. The castle survives only because a few fragile systems continue working. A rope, a grain store, a guarded well. Remove any one of them, and the walls of stone mean nothing. By the 9th week, the enemy camp grows quieter. Fewer horns sound at night. Fewer arrows strike the walls. Inside, the castle faces are hollow. Clothes hang loose. Even the guards lean heavily on their spears. In the chambers beneath the keep, the steward counts the final sacks of grain. Perhaps 12 days of food remain, maybe 15 if rations shrink again. 3 mornings later, something changes. Something had changed beyond the hills. From the battlements, soldiers see movement beyond the enemy lines. Riders appear on the distant road. Tents collapse. Carts roll away. The besieging army is pulling away. Inside the castle, the news spreads slowly at first. Too many weeks of fear have trained people not to hope. But by evening, the enemy camp is gone. The siege is over. The gates open for the first time since the siege began. Fresh air flows through the courtyard. People step beyond the walls cautiously, blinking in the sunlight like prisoners leaving darkness. The castle still stands, but the courtyard is quieter now. Too many faces are missing. From a distance, the fortress still looks the same. Stone towers, strong walls, banners in the wind. Yet those who survived understand something the stone walls never reveals. A medieval castle was not only a weapon against the enemy outside, it was a machine that measured how long human beings could endure hunger, fear, and each other before the system finally broke.